Before I begin, I'd like to say that this video is based on an article written by my friend Galilad for the Irish Liberal Association. More on that at the end. In 2019, Russian President Vladimir Putin made the claim that the liberal idea had become obsolete. His claim was a policy claim, and yet it raised an interesting question. Is the liberal ideology obsolete? Has it, as Putin put it, outlived its purpose? Now, if you're any variant of authoritarian, socialist, or fascist, your answer is very likely yes, and it's for this reason that the time has come to mount a defense of liberalism, and explain why its cause is not yet done. Before I begin, it's important to define what liberalism actually is. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines liberalism as a political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual to be the central problem of politics. Liberals typically believe that government is necessary to protect individuals from being harmed by others, but they also recognize that government itself can pose a threat to liberty. Most of you, or at least a very large chunk of you, may have the realization that this definition encompasses the majority of countries in the Western world. Liberalism and liberal ideology is the bedrock of the modern state, and because of this, it will never really be obsolete. It's kind of like saying that writing is outdated because everyone can write. But let's be charitable. Let's assume for the sake of argument that liberalism is not core to the modern state, that it's an ideology much like any other, and that it can be removed from our lives. Is liberalism outdated then? Once again, I think the answer is no. There are issues in our society which only liberalism can tackle. Take, for example, the modern surveillance state. Many fear it, and for good reason. It's hard not to fear an omnipotent state which, without warrant or due process, can curb your liberties in the name of stopping or preventing some nebulous threat. In an authoritarian, socialist, or fascist worldview, however, there is no ideological mechanism to prevent this. Both view the state as rightfully all-powerful, either as the representation of the proletariat or of the Volk. As Benito Mussolini put it, everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. Only in the liberal mindset is a concept such as "it is no business of the state what I do in private" a valid one. Liberals create a distancing between the state and the individual, and all power devolved to the state must be in some way justified. But what about the developing world? There are many countries which have never had liberal governments as they are still developing nations. One example is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which has effectively been in a state of constant civil war since its birth in 1960. Countries like these need liberalism even more than the Western world. In the developing world, the implementation of African socialism has certainly been one of the standout failures of the 20th century. Countries like Angola, Liberia, and Zimbabwe instituted sweeping economic reforms wherein they attempted to attain self-sufficiency. As a result, these countries experienced decades of suffering and economic stagnation. Liberia descended into civil war, in Angola a bucket of ice cream cost $31, and Zimbabwe, well, you know. Many instead are now turning to countries like Botswana and Rwanda. While they aren't perfect democracies by any stretch of the imagination, especially in the latter case, they are both relative economic success stories where free trade economics, checks on the power of the state, and crackdowns on corruption helped lift their people out of dire poverty. When these countries implemented aspects of liberalism, those aspects ended up working for their people, demonstrating that even today, liberalism is a valid ideology. Now, of course, liberalism comes in many forms, some of which are even opposed to one another, but at the end of the day, the core principle of liberalism is truly timeless. It will remain relevant for as long as the state exists. So long as there are any supreme authorities in the world, there will be a need to rein in and limit their power, because it is only when this kind of supreme power is shackled can the individual prosper. As long as that simple truth remains, liberalism will remain. Thank you for watching. As I said at the start, this video is based on an article written by Galilad of the Irish Liberal Association. Links will be provided in the description, and I highly recommend you to go check them out. This video took a lot longer and ended up being much shorter than I initially expected, but the next should hopefully be significantly longer and more in depth. Do the regular YouTube stuff, share the video around, leave a comment, and subscribe. Having said that, till next time.